Hello guys, today we'll talk about the activity lifecycle. When a user navigates through your app, out of it and back again, the activity instances in your app transition through different states in their lifecycle. The activity class provides some callbacks that let the activity of your app know that a state has changed. Those callbacks are on create, on start, on resume, on pause, on stop and on destroy. Depending on the complexity of the activity, you probably don't need to implement all of the lifecycle methods. However, it is very important to understand each of these callbacks so that you'll implement those needed to ensure your app behaves the way it is expected to. For example, if you are building a streaming music player app, you might pause the music playing and terminate the network connection when the user decides to put your app in the background. For example, if the user switches to another app. Now, when the user decides to come back to your app, that means when your app is in the foreground again, you'll have to have the proper lifecycle callback method implemented so that your app will reconnect to the network and allow the user to resume the music from the same spot. Now I'm going to give you some details about each callback, starting off with the onCreate method. So, the onCreate method, you must implement this callback which fires when the system first creates the activity. When the activity is being created, it enters the created state. In the onCreate method, you perform basic application startup logic that should happen only once for the entire life of the activity. As you can see from the code snippet below, the onCreate method, we are declaring the user interface, which is an XML layout file, and we define member variables. Another thing about this method is that it receives the parameters parameter saved instance state, which is a bundle object containing the activity's previously saved state. Thus, if the activity has never existed before, the value of the bundle object is null. A last thing is that your activity does not reside in the created state. After the onCreate method finishes execution, the activity enters the started state and the system calls the onStart and onResume methods in quick succession. Now the onResume callback. When the activity enters the resumed state, it comes to the foreground and then the system invokes the onResume callback. This is the state in which the app interacts with the user. The app stays in this state until something happens to take focus away from the app. Such an event might be, for instance, when the user receives a phone call, the user is navigating to another activity, or the device is screen turning off. When an interruptive event occurs, the activity enters the paused state and the system invokes the onPaused callback. If the activity returns to the resumed state from the paused state, the system once again calls the onResumed method. For this reason, you should implement onResume to initialize components that you release during on pause and perform any other initializations that must occur each time the activity enters the resumed state. It is very important to know that regardless of which build-up event you choose to perform an initialization operation in, make sure to use the corresponding life cycle event to release the resource. If you initialize something after the onStart event, release or terminate it after onStop event. If you initialize after the onResume event, release after the onPause event. Well, now guys, I think it's time for us to have a break, go make some coffee, drink some water or whatever. Text your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or whoever you want, your mom, your dad. Anyway, we'll be back in about a quarter and we'll talk for the rest of the callbacks, the onPause, the onStop and onDestroy, and then we'll go have a look on the code and try those callbacks. Okay, see you in a bit. Well, now guys, I think it's time for us.